In this video, we're going to talk about the measures of central tendency and dispersion from group data. So up to this point, we've discussed how to compute descriptive statistics from raw data. But often this raw data has already been summarized in a frequency distribution. In other words, grouped data. We can't determine the actual mean and standard deviation. We can only approximate these values. So how do we do this? When approximating the mean of group data, the mean of each data group is equal to the class midpoint. And the class midpoint can be found by adding two consecutive lower class limits, then dividing that answer by 2. So once we identify the class midpoint, then we would multiply by the frequency of that class, and then we would repeat this process and add those results. So I've given the formulas below for this, and I'll do all the class midpoints and maybe the first row for x of I times f of I, but I will also show you how to do this into the calculator, and this is how I would expect you to be able to do it for the test, using the calculator. All right, so let's take a look at this example. The cost per load in cents of 35 laundry detergents tested by a consumer organization are shown below. We want to be able to calculate the mean. Well, in order for us to be able to do that, I need to do the class midpoint for each of these. Well, how do I go about doing this? Well, let's take a look at the first one. We'll take the lower class limit that it's in, which is 13, then add it to the next lower class limit, which is 20, and divide by 2, we get 16 and 5/10. The next class limit would be 20 plus 27 divided by 2, and that's 23 and 5/10. The next one would be 27 plus 34 divided by 2, and that's 30 and 5/10. So you begin to see a pattern, right? The class midpoint is increasing by 7 every time. So I'll show one more of these, and then I'm just going to put the midpoint answers. Well, this one would be 34 plus 41 divided by 2. That's 37 and 5/10. And the rest would be as follows. Now, let's go back to the very first row. If I wanted to do this entire problem by hand, which I'm not going to, I would take the midpoint, which we figured out is 16 and 5/10. Again, a value that's not too big or not too small, kind of in the middle, times the frequency, which in this case is 2, and I would get 33. I would do that for every single row and add these up and then divide. Okay? But again, I'm going to show you how to do this into the calculator. Well, in order for us to do that, I need to identify where to put them into the calculator. So the class midpoint we will put as L1 in the calculator, and the frequency is going to be L2. So let's put these values into the calculator now. Okay, so we need to put the data values in, so hit Stat, highlight, edit, hit Enter. So remember, highlight L1, hit the clear button, then hit Enter, and it goes away. So L1 is the class midpoint, so I'm going to put those in now. Okay, so for L2, then that's going to be the frequency, so I'm going to type those in now. Okay, so now those are in. So now how do I do this? So go to Stat, highlight Calc, and we're going to go to 1var Stats. So the list we care about, that's a class midpoint, that's going to be L1. Now our frequency list, I need to put something in. That's L2. Well, how do I put L2 in? Hit second and the number 2, right? And you should see L2. Hit Enter, highlight Calculate, and hit Enter. So for us here, the mean is going to be 34 and 3/10. So let's put that on the paper and write an explanation on what it means in the context of the problem. Okay, so we know that the sample mean is exactly 34 and 3/10 cents. Now let's write out what this means in the context of the problem. So the approximate cost per load of 35 laundry detergents is 34 and 3/10 cents. Again, I will expect you to be able to put this into the calculator for the test. You will not be doing this by hand. Okay, let's take a look at the standard deviation for group data then. So I provided the formulas. So again, it's similar to the population and sample standard deviation that we did before. Data value minus the mean, the quantity squared, and you would add them up. Well, what's different? We would multiply by whatever the frequency is. And for the population, we would just divide by the frequency, then take its square root. Or, if it's a sample standard deviation, I would take the frequency minus 1, and then take its square root. So it's similar. But again, similar to the mean, we're going to put this into the calculator, but I do want to show one row on how this would work. So let's take a look at the very first row here. So we know, thanks to what we've done earlier, the mean is 34 3/10. So again, it would be what? The class midpoint minus the mean. That's negative 17 8/10. Squaring it would give us this. And then I would take that particular value times the frequency. And we would do this for every row. We would add up the very last column. And again, depending on if it's a population standard deviation or the sample standard deviation, we'd either divide by the frequency or divide by the frequency minus 1, then take its square root. So again, I can put this into the calculator. So again, when you do this, the class midpoint is L1 and the frequency would be L2. So let's go to the calculator and do this now. Okay, so you see L1 and L2 have already been filled in for us. So once you type those in again, what do? Stat, highlight calc, and we're going to one var stats. So this is going to be exactly the same as what we just did for the mean. The list, which remember is a class midpoint, is L1. The frequency list, that's L2. Highlight, calculate, and hit enter. Now, for us, this is the sample standard deviation because we're only using 36 laundry detergents. Remember, that's the S of X. That's going to be approximately 11 6/10. If I wanted the population standard deviation, I would do the theta of X, which would be approximately 11 4/10. So let's put this on the calculator, or on the paper now. Okay, so the sample standard deviation in this case is approximately 11 6/10. Again, you can use the calculator for these problems on the test.